it's Beth from Ruth Stitchery and ruthstitchery.com, and we're going to do another demo today. And I know I have mentioned before that I love handwork. I love applique, I like wool applique, I like doing cross stitch and hand embroidery, and I also enjoy doing English paper piecing, and that is the demo that we've decided to do for you today. I am certainly not the expert on this, but I have done quite a bit of it, and I have also learned a couple different techniques as I have gone along in it, and I just thought I would share just a little bit. If you've been thinking about maybe getting into English paper piecing, maybe this will kind of spark you to go ahead and get started and maybe take some of the fear out of it. So I'm going to give you just some real general information. I'll do a little bit of a demo on how I do it, and we're going to go from there. So a lot of times people think of English paper piecing and you automatically think of hexagons. So you think of these little guys, little hexagons that get sewn together in like a grandmother's flower garden. So I'll just kind of grab one of these. But English paper piecing is not just hexagons. There are lots of shapes out there of the papers. Hexagons just happens to be the most popular one, but there are a lot of other shapes out there for you, and I just grabbed a few to show you. Of course, I've got hexagons, but I also have the little clamshells. So you can do clamshells as English paper piecing. You can do leaves, of course. You can do diamonds. So, and they come in all different sizes. So we have a couple different sizes of several different shapes. They even come in really odd shapes. So these two I picked up to show you. Whoops. This is from Paper Pieces, the company that is probably the most popular company that makes the papers for English paper piecing. This is a Brimfield block, and this one is from a quilt that they did called Brimfield Awakening. So I kind of went to a class and started this, but I just wanted to show you these are not hexagons. These are really kind of strange shapes. So I'll hold one up so you can see the shape that it is. So it's all different shapes that end up coming together. Here's another one. Not quite sure. It sort of diamond, sort of gem shape here. This is how far I got in the class. Was just a teeny tiny part of the block. I think it goes right there. But it isn't just hexagons. There are lots of different shapes, so you can sort of see the papers that come in this one that actually make that block. And it's all done by hand to stitch that together. So just wanted to let you know that there's lots of options out there, and several more that I'm not showing you right now out there. But I thought that I would start by showing you how I originally learned to do English paper piecing, and that's with the actual papers, like from Paper Pieces. Sue Daly has some papers. So I was going to show you that, and then a couple of new techniques that I have learned that I kind of like better, but I do it both ways. So I'm going to start with the papers from Paper Pieces. These are 1.5 inch papers, and that 1.5 is the measurement along one side of the hexagon. So that's where the 1.5 comes from. So these are quite large, but they come in different sizes, and they'll come in a package, different quantities. This is 50, you can get 100, you can get 1,000. If you're doing a big project, you can get 3,000 of these in one package. So we're going to start with the papers. I also wanted to show you that they now have templates, plastic templates. Here's one that makes a 1 inch, and these are used for the fabric. So say you have 1-inch hexagon papers, you can get this template to actually cut out your fabric to that exact shape. The exact 1/4-inch seam is all the way around. And so this is just for one template, but we also have where you can get an entire set. So if you do a lot of English paper piecing and you want to have all the sizes to cut out your fabric, I think this goes from 3/4 of an inch all the way to 3 inches. So there are at least 8 in here, I think. And so that might be the way to go if you were doing lots of different size hexagons and you wanted the templates. So we have a little set. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I was taught to do this by my dear friend Debbie. And so you start with your paper, and this is just like cardstock. So that's how it comes in the package. And she right away suggested that on all of your papers, you take a teeny tiny little hole punch and punch 2 little holes right in the center. So I'll put my hand there so you can see. 2 little holes right there in the center. And this is basically gives you a spot to put a little tiny applique pin to hold the paper to your fabric. So I've got a couple of hexagon fabrics here. So I'm going to lay this down onto my fabric, and I'm going to just make sure that I've got about a 1/4 inch all the way around. I've got those 2 little holes in the center, and then I'm going to go ahead and use those holes to put a little applique pin, and that now just holds that piece of paper in place. So that I can go ahead and baste my fabric onto it without having to hold the paper. Another thing that people are now using that I didn't bring any in here now, but instead of a little pin in the center, you can use the little tiny sew tights. So they're little magnets, and you can stick that little magnet inside the center so that it holds your fabric and your paper at the same time, and then it won't shift. So there's lots of options out there. If you tend to poke yourself with a pin, you might want to try the magnets. You just have to get the correct size for the size hexagon or paper shape that you were using. So I started out using a 50 weight cotton thread. I would still use that if that was what I had. But I have started to use an 80 weight. So this is Aurifil's 80 weight thread, just because it's thinner and it hides my stitches. So, and I'd like to use the same thread to baste as I would when I stitch them together. So to actually baste this down, you're basically just folding this over. So I've knotted this thread. You're basically going to fold this over on one side and fold the second side over. So I know it's hard to see, this is black, but it's actually kind of mitered that little fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my needle through just that little miter that's in that corner, and I'm only going through the fabric, not the paper. So I'm not going down into the paper at all in this. So I have gone through once, and then I did basically another wrap with my thread and needle around that corner. So now if I let go, it's kind of being held in place. So I'm going to again fold this over and miter that next corner, and I'm just going to travel my thread all the way across in one big stitch into just the fabric right at that miter. I'm going to pull this, and then I'm going to wrap it around again, almost like I'm making a knot in that corner oops, I came unthreaded, without knotting my thread. So you can kind of see that I've done 2 little corners, and I'm just going to keep going around each side. So I'll flip this one over so you can see that I've already gone all the way around, and I've done that little kind of a knot in each corner, and it's just through the fabric again. It's not through the paper. So having those two little holes will help me later to be able to pop that paper out, because that paper will not stay in there. Okay, so I forgot to mention what kind of needle I was using. I was taught to use one of these black and gold applique needles from Clover, and so that's sort of my go-to. But you could use a Milner needle, you could use a straw needle. You basically want something where the eye doesn't get, isn't a wider in diameter than the rest of your needle, because you are going through those folds of fabric. You don't want it to get stuck. So this is the needle I prefer. It's just an applique needle, but you could use a Milner or a Sharp, and I'm using a size 9. So I kind of like the length of this. It's about, I'd say, 1.25 inches in length. It seems to be a pretty good size for me to control. So I've got a couple of these done. And so, like I said, I like to be able to use the same kind of neutral color. You certainly could change your thread color to the fabric colors that you were using, but I find if you use like an 80 weight, a thinner thread, you can very easily use, got it on the first time, yay! You can use just a neutral color. I went with a light gray, and it will just kind of sink into your fabric and you won't be able to see it. So there's a couple different stitches that you can use to put these pieces together. So basically, you would put these right sides together. And again, you could use those Sew Tight magnets to hold these together. You could put an applique pin all the way through to hold these together. Sometimes I'm just in a hurry and I don't use anything and I just hold them. But the first stitch that I had learned was basically just going through the folds of this fabric. So I went through the this side and then into this orange one. And again, I'm trying to just catch the fabric, not the paper, as best I can. So I'm going, I might have to take my glasses off to do this. So I'm just going through the right at the edge of the fold. And so you're doing kind of a little slip stitch as you go. How close you put these stitches together is kind of personal preference. So I'm just going to put a few in here, and then I'm going to show you a different stitch. So I'm going to open this up so you can see that, you know, I'm not going super close, but you can see that you can, I don't even know if you could see that thread at all. So that's like a slip stitch or a whip stitch that you can use to put these together. And that's the stitch I used for a very long time. And then I don't even know what I was doing. I think I was on Facebook or Pinterest. It might have been Pinterest. And I saw the the clickbait that said a new stitch for English paper piecing or something like that. And of course it caught my eye, so I clicked on it and it was a video. And that video showed doing a ladder stitch instead of this little whip stitch to put your pieces together. And so I watched the video on how to do it, and I have actually fallen in love with that stitch. And so I'm going to show you the difference basically in the ladder stitch is you are going over. So I'm going to go over to this other side. So my thread's coming out of the orange side. I'm going to cross and go over to the black, but when I make that stitch, I'm actually going to come back up on the black side instead of going all the way across like the whip stitch. So I'm going to do that, and then you come back across and you make a stitch in the orange side. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going a little bit farther apart than I might do, and then I go back over. So you basically are kind of making a stitch in one side and then going across, and it's like a little ladder stitch. So when I show you, you can see, well, it's kind of hard to see where I'm at here. But I have found, yeah, if I pull this, maybe you can tell. If you get up really close on that, I just found that the ladder stitch actually hides my thread even better by doing that stitch. So it just becomes a personal preference which stitch you like. I feel like the whip stitch takes a little bit longer than the ladder stitch, but it also depends on how fast you sew there as well. So that's basically how I put them together, and it doesn't matter what shape you're using, the stitch is still the same. So what I have found probably in the last year is there is a company, Hugs and Kisses, they're from Australia, and she developed her applique paper is what she calls it, and I had used it for other things, and then I realized she had her applique papers that were already cut into English paper piecing shapes. And so this is actually more, has the feeling of an interfacing rather than paper. And because her applique paper is water soluble, you don't have to take it back out. So it has a little bit of fusible on one side, and so just like any sort of fusible interfacing, you can kind of see it shiny on one side and it's dull on the other. And so basically what you do is you take that shape, so this is the 1-inch hexagons, you take that shape and you fuse it to the wrong side of your fabric, and so you fuse that down. No need for a pin, and there's no need to take this piece out later, which is super nice. And eventually, if you were to wash this, this is water soluble, so it will eventually go away. Probably even if you don't wash it, just over time, it'll just start to get softer and softer. And so you could thread baste this like I did on the paper, where you fold the ends over and do the little thread basting. However, another friend of mine said, you know, you can glue baste, you don't have to use your, you don't have to stitch that. So I'm just going to trim this and leave about a 1/4 inch all the way around just to make it a little bit easier. And then instead of thread basting, you can use, this is a water soluble fabric glue pen, and you can just put a line of glue and fold that over. And then you would just keep going. So I'm putting the glue on the paper. This is where I need my purple thing, and I didn't bring it today. And so you just work your way around. You can see this is a lot faster than thread basting. And so I'm just going to keep going till I get all the way around. And just like that, I have a hexagon that's already basted, and I can set that aside, and then I would go ahead and do that to all of these until I had a whole set, and then I would stitch it exactly the same way. So I would either do the whip stitch or I would do that ladder stitch to sew them together. So you start out, here's a little, like if you're working on hexagons and this is the shape that you're making, which is the grandmother's flower garden, you would think that maybe you start with the center one and you start attaching these, but I learned and I don't have any that are at this point, but I learned to actually make a ring of hexagons first. So don't start in the middle, set the middle aside, and you will just stitch together these two hexagons, and then you'll add this one until you have a ring all the way around, and then this is open. So you've got these hexagons sewn together all the way around to here. This line is not stitched on. Then you will take the center one and add them to the inside edge. And so you'd start here and you would add the center to all of these, this outside ring until you got here, and then that is your last stitch, is to close up this ring. So depending on how many layers, like this is one that is larger, so it starts with that in the middle, and then you would make another ring of these all the way around, and then basically now this is your center. Add your center all the way around, and then that last side is what would close this up. Okay, I know that was a lot in kind of a quick time period, but I know I was showing you hexagons. Just remember that it's the same technique no matter what the shape is that you are working with, and it comes in all different kinds of shapes. I wanted to just end on, if you're doing a large project with anything, you want a way to store it. And so I did bring this project in that I've been working on for a very long time. And I say working on, I haven't worked on it in a really long time. I started out strong and then kind of mellowed and started doing other things. But these blocks are all from the same project. These little diamonds end up in the middle of the quilt, and then it's got a bunch of these that go all the way around. So, and there's a lot of them. I can't remember exactly, but I feel like it was like 1,300 hexagons are in this quilt. And so you can see that I have basted a bunch of them. And so this is just one of those little cross stitch floss boxes, and it fit this size hexagon perfectly. And so each section of this is one of these. And so I went ahead and got them basted, and now I could just pick this up, take it with me. All I need is my scissors, my thread, and a needle, and I've got all of these that I could work on kind of on the go if I was just looking for a hand project. So for the same project, these are ones that haven't been basted yet. So again, smaller little cross stitch floss holder, but you can see I've got all of my fabrics already selected to make one of those blocks, but they need to be basted. So I believe that these are all the colors that I need to do, and then I move on to neutral ones. So this is even just a little tiny part of this one. But any way you can find to kind of keep yourself organized. It's another reason why I love English paper piecing, because it is one of those projects that you can just pick up and go. If you're going to be sitting there watching a sporting event, or you're going to go sit with some friends, it's just a really good, or you're traveling, just a really good hand project. Easy to grab. It's portable, and doesn't take a whole lot of supplies to take with you. So I hope you've enjoyed this really quick demo on English paper piecing. Certainly if you watch the video and you have some questions for us, please reach out or come into the store. We'd be happy to share some more information for you and show you the supplies that we have. And please don't forget to share our videos. We are loving all the responses that we're getting, so please keep them coming.